You're right, folks, and welcome back. Well, shit. I mean, what? So, yeah, they've announced the Cataclysm launch date and the pre-patch date as well. So, I guess I was right about it not being that far off, but holy Jesus, this is sooner than I think anyone really expected. With that said, let's go over some of the info in this post and try not to have a severe heart attack whilst doing so. First things first, pre-patch, April 30th, so as of this video, that is 21 days. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. We have 3 weeks of Wrath of the Lich King left. 3 more resets to get your Invincibles, Mimiron's Heads, Valenirs, Shadowmourns, and so on, before they all become pains in the arse to acquire. This short announcement admittedly is very in keeping with how they've handled Classic thus far. It was a similar time frame from TBC to Wrath, so fair enough, I suppose. It's not like they haven't pulled this stunt before, but their tight-lippedness, shall we say, is wearing a bit thin on my patience at this point, especially given the fact the beta is still a goddamn shambles. Now, if you are unsure what sort of things will be going the way of the dodo in the pre-patch, there is a handy-dandy little video I made a while ago that will have all those details for you, so do go check that out if you're curious. But suffice to say, it's a fair amount of stuff, and most of it is pretty cool. So, if you want your dungeon set 2s, for example, you've got 3 weeks. Chop chop. And speaking of that video, when I was talking about the ZG mounts in it, I did theorise that perhaps they might add a Bronze Dragon NPC that will allow you to turn back the clock and enter into the vanilla version of the instance, as they had done something similar for Onyxia in Wrath. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. This post makes it very clear that no. When the pre-patch hits, the Swift Azulian Tiger and Swift Rosashi Raptor will be unobtainable. They will be replaced with arguably inferior looking mounts in the 5-mans later in the year. And a surprising change that's listed here as well is the Insane in the Membrane achievement. This is a feat of strength that requires you to get exalted with several obscure reputations and is notoriously challenging and time-consuming, especially in Wrath of the Lich King. The reason this is odd is that it wasn't removed originally. When Cataclysm hit, the Chendralar faction associated with this achievement was simply removed from the criteria, as that faction was removed from the game. But you could still do everything else. So I am honestly really quite shocked to see it getting the axe here. Even curious as to why they would do such a thing when they could just, you know, remove the Chendralar faction like they did 14 years ago from the criteria. But apparently not. Then you've got the launch date itself, the 20th of May. Not gonna lie, it was around this time I was expecting the bloody pre-patch. Given the state of the beta, the time we've actually spent testing, and how much work needs to be done to get it even halfway functional at the minute, that seemed like a solid enough guess, with mid-June being when most suspected the game to go live. Apparently, Blizz have decided that a semi-decent testing period is not required, and they're just going to throw the expansion at our heads at great speed. And I'm honestly bricking it a little bit now, because as I said, we've got 3 weeks until pre-patch. That means Blizzard have 3 weeks to make sure classes are working and balanced, transmog, reforging, and guilds are working correctly, because as of this video, we haven't even been able to properly test things like glyphs, for example, which is ludicrous, and we've just had very little time to do anything besides leveling characters back to back, so the old world isn't a complete shambles. As of now, they've spent more time making sure the bloody quests in the Badlands are working than they have fixing class issues and giving us important expansion-defining features to test. So, yeah, not exactly optimistic at the minute. And just the overall takeaway is the beta is a buggy mess at the moment, and at this rate it's going to launch a buggy mess, because unless they can fix everything we've been wanting them to fix for the last 5 or 6 weeks in half the time, with twice the amount of broken features, we're going to be in for a hell of a ride. Also, their wording on the Flexi Raid lockout system is questionable. So the post says you can now do both 10 and 25 player raids in the same week. Technically, you could do that anyway, assuming you weren't doing heroic, and for reasons you just had to switch. I covered that a while ago, feel free to check it out if you want more details, but probably invalidated now though. Cheers, Blizz. If this is what they intended to get across, it's been done really, really, really poorly. But fair enough. Don't see why it needed to be said as if it was something shiny and different. However, if it's not, and it's going to be like Wrath of the Lich King, oh, mother of Jesus. Why does this suck? Because if you don't do both 10 and 25 man each week, you are now at an immediate disadvantage in Cata Classic. Because if a boss drops your best in slot weapon or trinket or cloak or any other bastard item, without doing both 10 and 25, you're behind. Plain and simple. There is no two ways about it. Sure, you don't have to, but if you are in a 25 man guild and you don't do 10 man on an off night, you're behind. Honestly, this is just another patented move by Blizzard to roger their player base and force engagement where it really wasn't needed. It also means for 10-man dedicated raid teams, you're screwed again. A big issue in Wrath Original and Classic was that 25-mans had more gear and could decimate your content. Now, whilst the items themselves will be no less powerful in 10-man this time round, there is now more incentive for 25-mans to split off and do 10s when they finished their 25-man runs for more gear. 10-man raiding teams do not have that luxury. They cannot simply spawn an additional 15 players to go and do this in reverse. Basically, what Blizzard is saying to the 10-man raiders here is thus: you are not worth their time. They do not care about making engaging content for you. You are an afterthought. If you want to raid properly, go join a 25-man. The thing is, the original changes to 10-man in Cata were received mostly warmly because it meant people could partake in endgame content at a higher level and receive appropriate rewards and ultimately be competitive with their 25-man brethren. This undoes that entirely and smacks of a development team that couldn't give a monkey's toss about its player base and just wants to burn through the content at a rapid pace whilst they try to keep afloat the floundering nonsense that is Season of Discovery. Now, I would usually try and be a bit generous with Blizzard here, even though, frankly, they do not deserve it. But I just can't be. In my last video, I made it very clear Cataclysm is not in a fit state for launch, and it needs a lot more dev time. Time we no longer have. Yes, there's going to be the weeks between pre-patch and launch, but that's not an excuse for poor time management. I think either Blizzard's egos were writing checks their dev team couldn't cash with a time frame, or they are so desperate to get classic Cata out of the way, they don't give a damn if it's buggy or unfinished. They just want to move on to the next thing as quickly as possible. I have had my fair share of disappointments with this company over the last 6 or 7 years, like the rest of you, but Classic was really something that ignited my passion for this game when the last embers of fondness were starting to burn out. But honestly, nothing has left me as pissed off with them from a development standpoint as this has, because it's clear they are just rushing, and ultimately at the rate they're going, they are going to bury Cataclysm and Classic as a whole in favour of pointless poxy seasonal crap. At the end of the day, I've spent weeks on the beta and it isn't ready, and unless they work wonders, 3 weeks is just not going to cut it. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there for now. If I carry on, I'll start using words that make Americans shrivel like prunes. Let me know your own thoughts down below. And wish the comments to like, sub, share your pals and so on. That'll be grand. Have a good one, folks. Bye for now.